We have a third line day. We are in gate 32, and it is the gate of continuity and duration. The third line is called lack of continuity. This is a classic third line configuration, the third line of adaptation in the structure. We know that the third line of adaptation is about bonds made and broken. It's about a process of trial and error that leads to the harmony of wisdom. That is the potential in the sixth line. Remember, the 3 and the 6 have a harmony together, like the 1 and the 4 and the 2 and the 5. So because of this, we also know right away when we're dealing with the 32nd gate, which is a very conservative gate and needs its continuity, when you get to the third line, you're going to have what the keynote, what the line name says, lack of continuity. You're going to have a lack of continuity because you're going to have the trial and error of meeting the other side and making mistakes. I thought you were worth more and you're not, or I thought you were worth less, but it turns out you have more value than I realized. You know, it can work either way. Either way, it's part of the trial and error process. The exaltation says indecision and persistent reevaluation that only because of its basic intelligence manages to endure. Indecision in times of transformation. For this 32-3, continuity is always coming to an end. This is lower trigram. They are caught up in a process in which they cannot maintain the relationships necessary on the other side. And so they are indecisive. And this is a very indecisive gate by its nature. They don't really know what things are worth because they're never allowed to stay with them for long enough to see how they unfold in the bigger picture. You know, it's a bonds made and broken kind of thing. They've got to keep moving, bump into something else. And this is the key, actually, because their gift here is to know what short-term things are worth. Through trial and error, they collect a lot of information and they build a valuable value framework. This lack of continuity becomes their continuity. For them, it's the process of collecting value information about value. Is that the right way around? In the detriment, we have an over-reliance on traditionally legitimized standards that in times of change can be totally out of step and suffer unexpected humiliation. A lack of instinct in times of transformation. Both the second and third lines have their detriment in Jupiter. And Jupiter can make our material plane easy or not so easy. And the fact of the matter is that Jupiter in detriment means that if you live out your detriment, you will be successful. It's not about surviving the detriment. It's not about changing the detriment or erasing it. It's about recognizing that if you live it out, if you are true to your nature, you will get financial success. So lack of continuity can be very successful because it can see short-term value. This is a great line for someone who wants to make quick money on the stock market. But if you want a long-term investment, you're going to have to look at the 32 line 1. Remember, remember that this is not a thought process. Ra said that this was one of those things that he learned about in regards to the nature of money. He was mentally defined, and when he was unaware, money was something that his mind pursued, just like most people, really. It was always that thing of, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to pay for this, I've got to pay for that. And then when he received his education from the voice, he said one of the first jokes for him was the realization that the material plane never gets to the mind. There is no tribal circuitry above the throat. Human design tells us that the mind has no inner authority. Part of that is that it has no inner authority to tell us what's right or wrong, or to make decisions. But it also has no inner authority in terms of being able to provide for us. The moment that we're living out our design, our type, our authority, we get the material resources that are correct for us. And in that scenario, then there would be enough for everyone. But that's not the way the program has been skewed. We have a misunderstanding about what's important. And that misunderstanding is generated by our minds, which have nothing at all to do with our resources. The mind can be an instrument of torment for us, really. You know, it's always telling us that things could be better or different, that we shouldn't have said that, or we should say this, or, you know, it's constantly measuring and comparing and gathering information and storing it up and then trying to make a decision from a cacophony of noise and confusion. This is the planet of suffering, at least until we let go of the mind having inner authority, until we let go of the resistance to what is actually happening in our lives. It always makes me kind of smile a little bit that, well, it's ironic, I suppose, in a way, but there is no gate of suffering in the body graph. No gate of suffering. We might have crisis and conflict and friction and correction and struggle, but there's no suffering. Suffering is the mind in resistance to what is. It's the mind telling us that things should be different. The tribe is not completely invested in being sociable. You know, when we look at the social channels, only 2 of them are tribal, and they are both over on the solar plexus side, you know, and they're to do with eating and mating. And in this context, yes, the tribe can be really social, but not all of tribal circuitry is social. On this side of the tribe, the sort of colder splenic side, we're here to make money. It's still supportive, but it is not social. The 32 doesn't have to like the 54 in order to recognize their value and support them in their ambitions. Mixing up the splenic and the solar plexus environment can get very messy, trying to bring together business and friendship. It's always risky because they're very different frequencies. The environment of our material plane is dictated by the spontaneous, splenic, feel-good immune system. In this third line world that we live in, money is so important. Money is health in many ways. Health is money. You know, think about the diet that you have, or the environment that you live in, or the medicines that you need, the doctors that you have to see, what you can afford in order to keep yourself healthy. You know, it all revolves around money somehow. And money, of course, is just energy. And that's the magic of the 32 in many ways, because it's not a motor gate, it's an awareness gate. It's measuring the energy, it's bringing awareness to value. The grounding in gate 42 in the third line is called trial and error. And this is a classic keynote for the third line, isn't it? So through genetic continuity, all third lines, of course, in every gate have got this trial and error quality. 42, we know it's a format gate, so it's going to be part of life when it's activated. So at the moment, we've got it through the earth. And when it comes to the continuity of gate 32, or the lack of continuity in the line 3 here, then trial and error is a big part of that process. Mercury moved into gate 28 today at 2:25 this morning. There's a lot of activity around the splenic center at the moment. This is the gate of the game player. It's part of the channel of struggle. And the fear associated with this splenic gate is the fear of death. It's the challenge of life itself, finding meaning in life. In this individual gate, there can be a sense of needing to really push the envelope, you know, take a gamble, find something that really fires you up and makes you feel alive. The moon moved into gate 36 at 9:47 this morning, and this is the solar plexus gate of crisis, the darkening of the light, which is also the lightening of the dark, of course. This gate carries an insecurity. It's very similar to its mirror gate, which is the 48, back in the splenic center. The 48 is insecure over its depth of knowledge, over its understanding and its ability to find solutions. The 36 is insecure about the depth of its experience, can be very vulnerable around being told it's inexperienced. And because the solar plexus has sort of elements of sexuality around it, then one of the vulnerabilities in gate 36 is that it be found sort of sexually wanting, if you like. So they have more and more experiences in order to keep their insecurity at bay. This is the channel of the jack of all trades, master of none. The 36 isn't repeating experiences in order to develop its depth, but it's exploring lots of different experiences in order for, maybe you could say, depth in variety. Gate 25 is next on the moon's journey around the wheel. 1846. This is the gate of innocence, of unconditional love, gate of the spirit of the self in the G center, often described as a cool love. It's a love that loves all things equally, or not, of course. I know many people who have this gate and have felt a great relief when they learn about its qualities, because they've carried a lot of grief or guilt around loving everything equally, especially mothers, with their children. And one lady was saying to me that her child would say, "Mummy, why don't you love me more than you love anybody else? Or why don't you love me more than you love the cat?" And she said she felt so much turmoil and guilt and grief over this. Then learning that the 25 is designed to love equally, it was such a relief for her. It was like a burden dropped from her shoulders, and she had it in her personality sun. So it was a really key activation for her to learn about, and it made a huge difference to her life. The moon then moves into gate 17 at 3:43. This is the Ajna gate of opinions, called following. Opinions are logical, based on facts and details. If they don't have that quality, then really they're just ideas, which is the mirror gate on the other side there. And ideas do not serve the same purpose as opinions. Opinions are part of the process of answering doubts and bringing those answers out to the collective in the form of their opinions, which can be verified and accepted into the collective, or tested and found wanting and returned to the logical process for more experimentation. So that's our third line in gate 32. Thank you very much for spending your time with me and for exploring this third line. And we'll be back tomorrow for a fourth line, moving on through the 32. So until then, as always, go gently.